Hi, this is Nick of the Habit Coach, and in this video I would like to explain to you a little bit more about what I do as a habit coach and how my approach might be a bit different compared to other coaches or therapists or counselors out there. So that you can make a better informed decision if this is helpful for you and this is something you can benefit from and if I'm a good fit for yourself. So the best way to probably do that is to go a little bit back to where I started as a coach, which is about 5 years ago when I finished my NLP training. And NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I got on that path thanks to this gentleman, Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is probably one of the most well-known coaches in the United States of America, and although he's getting a bit older. And the things he did intrigued me as a teenager, and I devoured his books and his seminars and his trainings, and that's what's got me started into coaching. And all those techniques are quite intriguing and quite persuasive and quite informative and very powerful. And I thought back then, if I could only partially get a little bit of that and copy those strategies, then it would make an awesome coach. 5 years further now, 2 years after that training, I finished my coaching training in Cardiff. But now 5 years further, I think a bit differently about Tony Robbins or most of the traditional coaching techniques, because they're very persuasive and they're very good in the short term. However, none of those techniques have been proven to work in the long term. There's no scientific literature to back it up. There's no evidence-based approach, and that's why they call it pseudoscience and not real science. And that's always something that's bothered me as a coach, but also as a former academic. I've done my master's degree. I've got a background in behavioral science and as a behavioral therapist. And what you're interested in is something that actually works and is backed up by evidence, by data. And that's not the case in NLP. So I'm trying to move away from those traditional kind of techniques, although a lot of coaches still use them because they're quite useful in the short run. And they're intriguing to apply in sessions, and most clients enjoy them as well, and they feel they elicit a change, and typically it does in the short run, but in the long term, most clients will go back to their usual selves, to their old habits and their old patterns, and that's something I don't agree with, because in the long run, people want to look for something that works, and they can do all by themselves when they're not seeing a coach or a therapist anymore. So that's the reason why I'm starting to do more of ACT, which I bumped into 2 years ago. And ACT stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And ACT is a behavioral therapy, which is an evidence-based approach. There's actually more and more literature coming out every week to support that people who have undergone ACT treatments can make a difference and are able to make and commit to a difference or to a change in the long run, to live the life that they want to live. No matter what unhelpful events has happened to them or a situation. It's a response to those events that are more helpful, that is able to make a change for their lives in the long run. And that's why I want to use this space now to make it a bit more real for you, because all this is very theoretical and very abstract. So I'm trying to see if I can make it a bit more real for you. So I've been doing this now for a while, last 2 years, ACT therapy, and more specifically now doing COVID-19, we're doing more online kind of therapy as well. So this is something I'll be using online, which most of you guys find helpful. So in order for me to explain ACT, let me go over showing you a little diagram. So in ACT, the main aim is to move towards the life that you care about, the life that you stand for, and the things that are important to you. And in ACT, we call those moves towards moves, because they move towards the direction you want to head. And what you want to move towards is something called values, and values are things you can't take off. Goals and actions you can't take off, like climbing a mountain or following a rigorous diet or going out for a run. Those are goals or actions, and when you've done them, you can take them off. But that's it, what you do after. The answer is values, because values support your actions, if that makes sense, or support your goals. You write them down in function of the things you care about. So the things I care about is being trustworthy, being loving, being supportive, being active, and being in touch with the outdoors, for example. These things are really important to me, and if I say they are important to me, that's good. However, if I don't follow them up, back them up with actions or with goals, then it's pretty meaningless, because you're saying one thing, but you're not able to commit to it. So you want to, on a good day, I'm able to commit to most of those things. So going out for a walk with the dog, going out for a surf, and doing my coaching, being credible, a reliable coach or a therapist, being loving towards my partner, having a nice meal, or go out for a drink and a pint. That's a great day for me. However, not all days are like that. Sometimes you move away from the life you want to live, and those moves are called away moves. And they don't make sense in the long run, but they do make sense in the short run, because there's always a function behind behavior. There's always a reason why you're doing something, why you're lying on the couch watching Netflix versus not doing your homework, or why you're not running but you are cooking a meal instead. There's always a reason why you're doing something. And the reason why people commit to those short-term strategies is because it's really sometimes uncomfortable to commit to something that you really care about. So sometimes you distract yourself, sometimes you just opt out because it's getting too much for you. Sometimes you think your way out, so you say to yourself, it's not for me, I'm not good enough, I will never succeed, what's the point, I might do it tomorrow, etc., etc. All kinds of reason giving kicks in, because your brain is there to protect yourself from failure and from disappointment, for example, and we don't want to go there. So especially when we have difficult situations, thoughts or feelings, so something difficult happens to you, we call that in behavioral science an antecedent. So something unsettling. So there can be COVID-19 now, for example. There can be your GCSEs coming back that are not as good as you expected. It can be you're being made redundant at work. It could be you're really uncomfortable in a certain situation because you have to make a speech at work, or it can be a certain person you don't get on with, and every time he's close or around you, you just freeze. And that's because, like I said, your brain is there to protect you, and there's different kind of short-term strategies to do so. Distracting yourself, opting out, thinking your way out, or using substances as well. So food or alcohol or other types of drugs, they all can be quite effective in the short run. However, if you commit to that in the long run, you miss out on all the good stuff that you really care about, if you're honest to yourself. But in order to move towards, you have to be vulnerable, and that's quite difficult. Because, like I said, especially when you're in a difficult situation, we tend to move in this direction, away from the life we want to live, and not in this direction. Because, it's difficult enough as it is when we have a difficult situation. COVID-19, like I said, is a good example. And then we become hooked. Let me give you a personal example to make it even more real. And the personal example is that me and my partner are doing fertility treatments because we want to have a small family, and that's all we care about. And we want to move towards that. However, 4 years ago, I got diagnosed with suboptimal sperm is the official word, and I found that really difficult. And when that happened to me, I became hooked by my brain in an unhelpful way. So my brain was saying, thoughts that came up was, why does it happen to me? I'm sure these results are absolutely ludicrous. They are not correct. So let's do them again. 3 times later, the results still came back with a suboptimal, unfortunately. Or, other thoughts were like, why does it happen to me? Because I'm always healthy, I've always been fit, got a healthy metabolism, I've never smoked, so on the NHS paper I got, the advice was make sure you don't get into warm water too much, or have a warm bath, because that's not good for your sperm. And ironically, I was a coach training instructor back then, so I was in the sea for about 4 or 5 hours every day. So all those kind of things quite upset me back then. However, if you're upset, that's not really helpful, or when you're hooked, you do stuff that moves you away from the life you want to live. So in order to get past that, you need to make sure you give those thoughts a bit more space and you allow them to be there, because you can't stop your brain from chatting to you. The more you try to stop those kind of things, the bigger it becomes. If you worry about your anxiety, you get anxiety about your anxiety. If you worry about your lack of confidence in a certain situation, and then it only gets bigger. If that makes sense. And a lot of therapies, a lot of coaching therapies, and a lot of older CBT kind of, traditional CBT kind of talking therapies, they are trying to distort those thoughts, memories, or visualizations. Hypnotherapy is a good example of that. And that might work in the short run, but I generally believe in the long run that doesn't work. Again, because it's pseudoscience, so there's no evidence, but also because when it really gets unpleasant, when you really go through an emotional storm, there's no way that you can stop those thoughts or feelings or emotions in your body. It's just your natural response of your brain kicking in, trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe. And the way to do that initially is to keep you inside the house, not go out, don't do something that scares you. But in the long run, that's not a very fun place to live. There's no vitality, there's no kind of challenge, and you want to move towards the stuff that you really care about. But that's difficult. Like I said, you have to be vulnerable and you have to allow those things to happen. But it doesn't mean when you have anxiety that you can still follow up on the things that matter to you. That said, sometimes your anxiety is so big that it influences your attention so much, or influences your behavior, that the two things are the same. So your thoughts and your actions are almost the same. If you really believe that you can't do something, you feel unable to commit to something towards the life you want to live. And so the aim of the therapy then is to become more aware and notice when you become hooked by your thoughts or by your feelings or sensations in your body, and give it more space and learn techniques so you can allow them to be there and don't put too much attention. Because the more you give them attention, the more you feed it. But just like them, allow them to be there and give them space so you can move towards the stuff that you care about. Because if you give it less attention, you free up your mind and your attention, and your actions and your thoughts then become like separate things. You can give them some space. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So in our case with IVF, what we have to follow up on is going to the clinic, taking our vitamins. My partner has to go through the physical side of things, unfortunately. So taking the injections, taking tablets. But it doesn't mean that she still is very uncomfortable about the whole situation, because we've had 4 or 5 trials now. I've lost count almost. And it's very natural to think, well, it doesn't work, or what's the point, or it will never work for us. But it doesn't mean that we can still go to the clinic, or have the vitamins, or take the actions that are actually needed to go through an IVF treatment. So yeah, that's the main aim of the therapy, to make sure that you're able to commit to the stuff that you care about, irrespective of the things that unpleasant things that happen to you. Because we can't control those things, and we can't even control our initial response to them, which is typically unhelpful. What we can control is becoming more aware of when those things are unhelpful or not, and when they are unhelpful, then we can try to diffuse ourselves and give those thoughts and feelings a bit more space, so you can act more upon your values and do the stuff that matters to you. So that in a nutshell is ACT therapy, and obviously perhaps IVF treatments is a bit of a heavy subject, but they can be applied to all kinds of situations. So it doesn't have to be IVF treatments. It can be public speaking, it can be moving to a different career, it can be a colleague that you don't get on with, what do you do then? It can be pretty much everything. Typically, it's a difficult situation you experience, and then learning the skills to become aware when you become hooked, and then learning the techniques to unhook yourself so you're more able to act on the stuff that you care about, your values, because that's what life is about. But it is difficult, don't get me wrong. So if you're interested in this, give me a shout, drop me an email or text, or give me a phone call, and we can have a chat about it.